When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we have a pretty unique podcast episode. So if you've been listening to Yoga Birth Babies for a while, you've probably come across several different podcast episodes about matrescence, that transition from what we call maiden to motherhood. And we often talk about the identity shift and really the kind of upheaval that becoming a parent creates in one. But today we're actually taking a look from a father's point of view. And, it's exciting because I don't know the last time I've had a man on the podcast, and we've never really had that. What's it like for a father or a partner to transition into this new role, to watch their loved one move through pregnancy, and how can they be involved, and how might they show up for the birth, and how they're interwoven into the family. And one part of the conversation I thought was really interesting was I was reflecting back on my own lineage of my father and my grandfather and my husband, and how through the generations their roles and participation in the family has changed. And so we look at that modeling of older generations to people that are becoming fathers and partners right now. It's a really great conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. So Dan Doty is the father of 3, a husband, an outdoorsman, and a meditator. He's the co-founder of Fatherhood Ready and Fatherhood Unlocked. He was the co-founder of men's organization EVRYMAN and the producer-director of the hit TV show MeatEater. He's been featured in the New York Times, Men's Health, The Today Show, and the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation with Dan. He gives a really wonderful perspective and some solid tools for fathers to think about as they move into this new part of their lives, and how they can really think about how they want to show up for their family and be involved. I'm excited for you to hear that. Now, before we get to that, as always, I love to give an update of PYC. We're pretty status quo. We've actually added a couple of new workshops at the studio that I'm really excited about. One in particular, and we're still working on finding the ideal name, but it's from the Body Ready Birth Method, and Ellen Gary is leading that, and we're trying to find a name that really embraces all it does. It helps people understand their body and gets the partner involved. We just had it recently for the first time, and what everyone kept saying is it's about practical information. And so I'm excited to share that new workshop with you. You can check that out on our website. And then we've got just a few more things added to the schedule. We've got our baby fingers, our baby sign language. We have our breastfeeding and lactation classes, just more and more that we're adding that I'm excited for you to see. Now, most of the workshops, almost all of our workshops that we do in studio, are available on demand because I know not everyone's in the New York City area. So we also have those for you, as well as our prenatal and postnatal classes. You can check that out. And then the last thing I want to talk about is our prenatal yoga teacher training. We just started, as I'm recording this, we just started our new fall series. So we always do this 4 times a year, 3 times online, 1 time in person. And we just started our first online training for this year. I took about 3 months off of teaching it, and it felt so good to be back into that material. Now, I sometimes get inspired by other courses I'm taking or information I'm learning. So I was really inspired that I did a bit of an overhaul, and I'm really excited about the material that we're offering. So if you're interested in supporting the pregnant person through the work of yoga, check it out on prenatalyogacenter.com. All right, that is enough of me. We're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Dan Doty.
Stop. 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 Had enough? Kick out mucus and quiet the cough with Mucinex 12-Hour DM for long-lasting cough and chest congestion relief. Buy Mucinex 12-Hour DM at your local retailer. Use as directed.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I am fantastic today. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. You know, I was thinking about this as I was getting the notes together for our conversation. I so rarely have men on the podcast. This is kind of fun. I realize my whole world is basically women and then my husband. So it's kind of nice to talk to another guy. So especially about fatherhood. It's not a conversation I often have other than with my own husband. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your take on things. So I guess we should start with, I'd love to learn a little bit about you and what led you to focus on the role of fathers in creating a father-centered community.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the most obvious thing and the first thing to say is I'm a dad of 3 myself, and I'm like in it, right? I'm in the mix of it right now. I have 3 kids, 8, 5, and 2, 2 boys, and my youngest is my daughter, Wilderness. So that's kind of like the most obvious first answer. But I have actually spent my entire career spanning 2 decades now, really focused on boys and men's issues specifically. And the reason that that's been true is that I stumbled into my first part of my career, honestly, just like happened into it, lucked into it, without knowing what I was doing. Actually, I became a wilderness therapy guide, and that saw me going out on these extended wilderness trips with struggling adolescent boys. And, you know, I'm in my early 20s, and it just was like I found my calling. I found my purpose. It was just so lucky and wonderful to show up there. And specifically in doing that work, I got to experience what it was like when dads would come out, join the trips, raft down a river, hike up a mountain, and sit down across from their son and actually open up their hearts and actually learn how to communicate and listen and see each other. And the like seismic, cosmic level of beauty and healing that I experienced as a young man with fathers and sons made it so that I couldn't do anything else with my career, right? I've just been locked in on what is it that is hurting, holding our men back, you know, keeping this generational father wound going forward. And I mean, there's so much more to say about that, but that was the reason that I began.
Wow, that seems really beautiful. In fact, I think of like my own, I have a 13-year-old. I think of how that would so benefit him and my husband to have that time, especially because they're both crazy wilderness people, like rafting, hiking. Well, more my husband on the hiking, but the rafting and the outdoors. Both my kids rock climb. So wow, that sounds incredible, like an experience. I know you're not. Do you still do that?
Sort of. I mean, I've kind of always done it in different ways. I'm actually just about to begin a pretty major project in creating rites of passage experiences around the country for adolescent boys and probably their fathers as well. So it's on my radar. I do it as a part of my work, but the main chunks of work that I have done in the past, let's say 10 years, the first was that I founded or co-founded a company called EVRYMAN, and EVRYMAN is a men's work organization that does men's retreats and organizes men's groups, and with a very specific focus of modeling and teaching emotionality, vulnerability, and really just solid relational practices. And that's been a big part of how I've sort of tackled this larger problem. And then I left that company 4 years ago and I launched Fatherhood Unlocked because I have seen, I mean, let's just be honest, getting men to show up to sort of open their hearts is more acceptable today than maybe, 20, 30 years, even 10 years ago, but it's still a hard sell in a lot of ways. And so I just see fatherhood as it's the time men are really, really, really needing support and are aware, I think more aware of their inner life and just everything. It's just like the perfect moment. And particularly, I'm especially excited about the prep, the fatherhood prep, right? I'm really, our main focus right now is called Fatherhood Ready, which is a program and community to support expecting dads. So I've kind of honed in this large, big picture care for, men's well-being as a whole. And I just kind of keep getting a little more narrow with how do we actually make a mark? How do we actually do something that counts?
Well, I like the idea about the expectant dads, because that's what I often see, because I work mainly with expectant parents, mainly women. And I have seen a transition to the dads being, or the partners being more involved. I've been doing this for over 2 decades, so I've seen really a shift. So let's actually talk a little bit more about the gap between the expectations placed on new dads today, because as you mentioned, it's different than what my dad experienced.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, and that expectation placed on new dads, and the support and the community that I really think they need to help set them up.
I always worry that I'm being a little hyperbolic about this or a little dramatic, but I actually don't think I am, right? If you do look at and I've done this exercise with a lot of dads that I've worked with, is we go through and we literally write down a job description for what our dads did as dads, right? So I was born in the 80s and, went through the thought experiment, what were my dad's main roles? What was his description of his role? And then we did the same thing for myself in my life. And it is, 10 times bigger right now than for my dad. And this is I think this huge, almost historical humanity level shift right now that we're undergoing. And I think it's getting talked about a little bit, but I don't know that we've collectively sort of taken a beat or a breath and recognized how big of a shift that is happening right now. So, in my dad's generation, he was present at the hospital when I was born, but the generation before, my grandpa wasn't, right? He probably wasn't even let in the room. And in this really short amount of historical time, now myself and the other men about my age, we're not only present at the birth, we're birth partner. We're number one birth partner. And we are taking on levels of caregiving and nurturing and relational life that just have not been modeled by the men before us. And so yeah, we're in this moment of where the expectations are the old school stuff hasn't changed, right? Most of us still need to earn a strong living and take care of the world. And obviously we all partner with our wives or partners, to make those things work. But a lot of responsibility still falls on men in the old fashioned way. And now this human kind of deeper relational part is just online, right? And I think dads are doing an amazing job, honestly. And I think there's so much good happening out there, but there are a lot of skill sets and honestly just a lot of context that's missing for dads out there.
Well, let's dive a little bit into the skill set. So what skill sets do you think are missing for dads?
So one of the skill sets that I think dads historically have had is to do stuff, right? Get stuff done. I think a lot of dads throughout history are like, can you just give me a checklist, right? Like what needs to be done? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. But one of the skill sets that's really real and alive right now is moms need us to figure it out or, carry the mental load of what's happening and not just sort of be the, look to our wives or look to our partners to tell us what's going on. So that sort of larger accountability, call it, or taking responsibility for the process of pregnancy and the birth, and logistically, but also relationally. So that's one that I think is just kind of on fire in the zeitgeist right now. Is that dads, and it's really kind of a humbling process. I can report to be a very engaged dad myself, to really want to be doing well, to want to be the best partner I can, but just kind of constantly coming across realizing what I don't know or what I'm not aware of. So that's a big one.
Can I dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah.
So I like that skill set. Like as soon as you said that, my little face smiled. I'm like, yes, take some of the mental load. Yes. But what does that look like? So I guess during everything, like you mentioned, pregnancy, birth, early parenthood, what would them taking the mental load, like how do they do that? What are you suggesting?
Well, so that's exactly what we're trying to do. So we have something we call our baby prep planner, which is literally what dads have been asking for decades, which is tell me what to do. So it's literally an A to Z checklist of everything that needs to get done between finding out that you're having a baby and birth. So it's just, I think it's a 74 item list.
Okay. So instead of 74, give me like 3.
Well, research doulas, research 10 local doulas and get up to date on what a doula does and truly like do the legwork and come to your partner with some options, right? That's one.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, another would be start to get ahead of an understanding of what are the things baby's going to need when they come home, right? So the diapers and the equipment and the gear, that, and then a lot of it is reading and just like gaining knowledge, right? So dads go into this not having any idea what breastfeeding is like or bottle feeding, right? And dads just kind of like take their partner's lead, which is appropriate, right? But also having their own knowledge set. So there's a lot of knowledge gaining, and then there's just a lot of, find the right baby seat for your car and get it and take care of it. So it's a lot of it's just practical, get this done, but also with a level of being informed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. In fact, as you say that, I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Cause I realize I'm the one that does all that research.
Yeah.
And it would be nice for, not just me, but I'm sure many others out there, instead of me presenting my husband like, these are some doulas, what do you think? For him to be like, these were the doulas I found, what do you think? Now, I don't know if I'm so type A and controlling that I wouldn't be like, let me look too. But
oh, of course. And yeah, I should say that this is not we don't offer this in the tone of take everything off of your partners, in no way. This is given under the auspices of don't be clueless. Don't sit around and wait to be told what to do. Make sure that you're available and prepared to step up and be as supportive as possible, right? I think that's the intention behind it.
No, I like that. And I know you talked about dads being more, or partners being more involved in the birth scenario. And again, that is a big change. And I really appreciate you sharing that. How do you feel that impacts the dad when they're more like, how do you think that helps them interweave themselves more into the families when they're actually present and supporting?
I mean, I think that, and I've been sort of told, or it's been shared by other mentors of mine, that if there's one single thing, that we could do to help humanity, it would be to get dads all the way present, hands-on, right there, 100%. In the birth process. And I know it true for myself, right? I have a background of lots of years of meditation and wilderness experience and introspection and, intentionally wanting to grow and be the best version of myself, nothing has impacted me the way that being there in the presence of birth has. Nothing has come close to, giving me a sense of awe and an understanding of what this is all about than those experiences. So an analogy I like to give is that, if our families are like a tapestry or a sweater or a rug or something like that, a lot of times dads are kind of like a string that's not woven in fully, right? They might be lying next to it or around it, but there is this sort of, and I'm talking like on a deeper generalized sense here, but there is something about family life, and I do think it's changing, where they feel separate. They feel separate from the process. They feel slightly separate from the home. And I just think that, when dad can be all in, and I mean, I'm sure you're aware, right? But the outcomes for mom's health, the outcomes for baby's health that go long into life, it's just like the best win-win situation of all time.
Yeah. All right, I want to get into talking about your Fatherhood Ready program, but we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, let's dive into that because I'm really curious about it. We'll be right back.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
How do you feel great on vacation? Like really good? Easy. You go to Aruba. You'll spend your time relaxing on cool white sand beaches and floating in healing blue water. You'll immerse yourself in natural wonder and find your center on an island where things move at your speed. You won't just feel great, you'll feel relaxed, renewed, and ready for life. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your trip at Aruba.com.
All right, so we are back. So let's talk about Fatherhood Ready. What are the 3 pillars of getting fatherhood ready?
Yeah, the first is getting informed, which I sort of spoke about a little bit earlier. Getting informed about what's actually happening in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, right? And so part of that getting ready is, I guess, intellectual or knowledge-based, right? So you can read a book, you can watch some of our videos and kind of get the context and intellectual understanding. But what we're also doing here in terms of getting dads ready for these 3 sort of phases is experiential sharing, right? There's not much storytelling that goes on between dads. There's not much that, dads don't sit around and tell each other birth stories, or actually they might.
My husband does.
Yeah,
He's so very involved.
Yeah.
He still talks about it to people. And I love when he's like, we labored. I'm like, did we labor? I'm pretty sure I labored and you were there. And he was like, it was so exhausting for us. I'm like, was it? But he very much embodies that.
I mean, I do too. And so that experiential piece is we're just dads telling dads about our part of it and our experience of it. So the first sort of pillar is the preparation, the knowledge gaining, and just the hearing what's up and like getting the curtains pulled back on the process of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. The second pillar is strengthening our relationship. So we're super excited about this part of our course, is that it's probably like a 3-hour video module broken into a bunch of prompts. And it has a lot of like conversation starters in it, a lot of frameworks. It walks dad through a process of kind of leading him and his partner through a visioning process, like what kind of parents do we want to be? We give a lot of suggestions for, avenues of therapy, or just all of the things that a dad can do to proactively strengthen the relationship before baby comes. So that's pillar 2. Pillar 3 is self-directed. Pillar 3 is looking at fatherhood as an initiation or a rite of passage for oneself. It's kind of honoring and recognizing that, dude, you're about to go through something you can't even imagine. You like, this is so big and so different. You're going to come out the other side a different person. So this pillar is a series of activities, exercises, and prompts to really sort of help a dad prepare for the shift in identity that's on the way.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. Like, what kind of things should dads think about as they're heading into that huge initiation of parenthood? Because I know that I've had many podcasts about matrescence that made into motherhood cross. What do you think there is that same thing for dads or partners? And what are some of the things that they should focus on, especially that identity change? I know that has been a huge conversation within my students, as well as my own identity was. I remember being referred to as mommy one time, like we're out at a restaurant, they're like, mommy, what do you want? I'm like, whoa, what? Like, that was a little weird. Yeah.
So, I love this question. So the first thing that I would just define in like what the transition looks like or means, and this is, kind of compiled through a lot of dads' words and voices, is that, I think that men have a particular brand of narcissism that's inherent in our lives.
Ooh,
and I don't
mean
that. I don't mean that in a clinical way. I don't mean that even in a disparaging way. But most men, and I'm generalizing, but most men go through life being like uninterrupted in the assumption that we are the center of the universe, right? Like, it's part because of all of our privilege in every direction. It's just, there is this complete self-focus. And so when we become fathers, we call it like a Copernican revolution, right? We think we're the sun most of our life, and then we become a parent, and all of a sudden, holy shit, I am not the most important. I'm not in the middle. And all of a sudden, like, this entire different way of being alive happens. And that's, described by different men in different ways. And it doesn't actually kick in for everybody. You don't have to come to that conclusion. But most dads who take a little bit of time to kind of reflect, they're like, whew, like, life A and life B, life is just fundamentally different now. What I would say, that one of the first things I think is important for a man to think about preparing for that transition is really taking an intentional look at his own father or fathering or lack of fathering, and really take an inventory, right? Kind of get upfront and honest and have a place to sort of hear and be heard about the modeling for fatherhood that we've had, right? Because becoming a dad, most men haven't held a baby or have held very few babies. And, we're walking into this new scenario with such high stakes. It's like the most important thing in the world to dads to be a good dad, but we have zero practice. We have very little modeling. We have very little mentoring. So that first step of really taking a look at, what are the imprints we're going into this with, right? Like, what are the biases? What's the subconscious sort of shape of fatherhood in my mind and my heart? And then, that's just the beginning, but that gives at least a sense to, there's an exercise we have called like drawing a line in the sand. And it's like, okay, here's the stuff that from my family, from my past that I want to carry with me. And here's the stuff that I'm really committed to leaving behind. And obviously that's a massive undertaking, but it's important to get a good intentional look at it.
Yeah. And I want to go deeper into what you're talking about, the modeling of past generations. And I think that can be intimidating in a sense, because I'm using my own lens. Like, I think about my grandfather and then my dad and now my husband. And so I was born in the 70s, so a little older than you, but I think of like my dad's dad and like how he showed up as a grandfather, and then I know how he modeled for my dad. They were very removed compared to what we see and what you're offering for fathers to be more involved. And if fathers of this generation feel they don't have that kind of role model, they're probably pretty intimidated to step into that. So I guess I'm not even sure how to ask it, but it just seems so overwhelming. Like, how are they supposed to show up to be this new dad when they may feel very intimidated because they don't have that modeling? It's just so different from the way that they likely grew up. And some men didn't have father figures. So how are they stepping into that new role, and how are they finding those role models?
So I really appreciate how you framed that, because I think that sort of almost wordless feeling there is exactly the overwhelming constant feeling of a lot of dads staring into the prospect of being a dad. It is this, the analogy that we use sometimes is that, you're about to step on the field for the Super Bowl and you're going to play in the Super Bowl, but you've never been to a football practice before, right? You don't know the game. And I think that, so that's like the description of the feeling, which is very, very real. There's some good news here. One is that if we simply turn toward each other as dads, as if we come together in community, if we raise our hand, if we're willing to to reach out for help or support in any way, like it's not ideal, right? It would have been ideal to have wonderful connected fathering modeled to us. That would have been the best, but we can get there. We can get there actually quite quickly. And this is actually something I have to share based on my decades of work with men, is that we are wired to be connected. We're wired to be compassionate. We're wired to be vulnerable. We're wired to have emotions. We're wired to be great dads. And it actually doesn't take that much time or work to get that stuff online. It really doesn't. But what it does take is courage. It takes some guts, It takes some awareness and some guts to do exactly what you just said, right? That feeling of like, how the hell would I figure this out? But it's just like, well, I need to, and I'm going to, and you just kind of like move towards something, right? And that's exactly what we're hoping to do here, is create an easily accessible path for the guys that are ready to really lean in.
Do you have any specific tools? I know you have a program, so I'm not asking you to give your whole program away, but those that I know some listeners are probably gonna be like, partner, come listen to this. If they're listening and they just want like one or two solid tools just to help them get in that mindset of like, I can do this. And then I'm going to throw something further at you. We're talking about that transition from no kids to kids or like babies.
Mm-hmm.
What about if someone's listening, they're like, oh, I do need this. I do need to examine my relationship. And if they have older babies or kids, I just threw a lot at you.
Well, I'll answer that one first, right? So honestly, our big picture plan here is to create a large scale community and network of support for dads, all dads, right? That's where we're headed with this. So, our LLC is called Fatherhood Unlocked LLC. And so we have a lot of things in planning for that. But we really, really want to focus in on expecting dads first. It just seems like it just seems like intuitively the right way to go. I would say for dads of young kids, our programming works. It still works. In the Fatherhood Ready stuff fits, especially the last two modules, right? So of the 3 pillars, one is getting ready for birth. If you already did that, you don't need that. But if you're about to have another baby, it would land. It would certainly land. But the second 2 pillars, the relational readiness and the internal self-readiness, that's perennial, right? That's stuff that I still continually lean into myself. Like, how can I be a better partner? How can I slow down and actually pay attention to what my wife needs? And, where am I on my own growth journey? So it's, yeah, I mean, we're marketing obviously to expecting dads, but I do think the course is valuable for others as well. In terms of tools, this one I'll just point out for expecting fathers specifically. The process of setting intentions and honestly just taking time to think something through, it becomes a superpower when you become a dad, right? So we get short on time when our kids come. We don't have that. We just move into this reactive way of living. And so we kind of see this expecting, pregnancy period as really valuable time to slow down and, drop into like, what kind of dad do you want to be? Right? A visioning practice of like, how do you want to show up? Like, what are your values? So I'll just maybe isolate that specific practice going through, and this might sound cheesy, maybe not, I don't know. But literally looking through a list of values and thinking about, what do we care about? What do we really, really care about? And how do we want to live this life with our kids as we do this thing? These exercises are finite. They're, well-structured and guided. And I feel like what happens when you take them on and you complete them is there's just this part of you that gets to rest a little bit, right? Because you've kind of taken the time to think through where you want to go. And I don't know, I'm a big believer in visualizing and visioning in general. And I just think, I don't know, I'm not sure if you find this, but as a parent, if I only stay in reactive mode, man, things don't go so well. So getting the practice of being more intentional, I think, is huge.
Yeah, my practice is, not surprising as a yoga teacher, when I'm getting reactive, I have to ground myself because I get and it happens in a split second that I can get reactive. I literally have to be like, okay, feel your feet on the floor, feel your breath, slow down, because it can, I found that since entering parenthood, my reactive time is very quick, as well as my anger, which is another that would be a whole nother conversation. But I don't think that's so unusual to do that. In fact, my husband and I have had to talk about like, okay, when we're getting reactive, how do we pull it down? Because we do know that we model for our kids, our behavior. These have been great. So I want to take one more break. When we come back, what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? We'll be right back.
Congrats! You're pregnant! Now, what do you do during the next 9 months? You need Preggy Pals. We educate and entertain expectant mothers and those hoping to become pregnant. Each episode features pregnant moms-to-be as well as experts. Together, we explore topics aimed to embrace pregnancy and empower women as they give birth to their babies. Subscribe through your favorite podcast app or say, "Hey Alexa, play the Preggy Pals podcast." And be sure to visit newmommymedia.com to check out our other parenting shows, Newbies, Parent Savers, Twin Talks, and The Boop Group. Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
So we're back, and you've given some really great practical tools. So what's one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
Yeah, this one's really simple and practical. Start using your airplane mode on your phone very intentionally. One of the practices I give to dads with kids is, between coming home from work and kids' bedtime or whenever there's family interactive time whatsoever, the challenge is to just be airplane mode 100% of the time. And I think I spend a lot of time working with dads and what does it actually mean to be present? What does that look like? What does that take? But I think that's the first layer, right? Phone off, away from you, not distracted, right? So to take that one step further, a practice that I love to offer is a 15-minute sort of presence activity where you can practice this before you have kids, maybe with your partner or with a friend. But once you have kids, this is my favorite practice in the world. You put on a timer for 15 minutes, you put it on airplane mode, you set the timer, and then that 15 minutes, it's just like a meditation, but you absorb yourself into your child's world completely, and you get down on their level and you do what they say, and you just engage fully. And if you get distracted, you just come back and engage with your kid, right? And it's this kind of like beautiful meditative practice, but it's in action, right? It's off the mat, I guess you would say in yoga, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can start practicing being present before baby comes. Yeah, first turn your phone off, and then give yourself these little practice periods of giving someone or something your full attention for 15 minutes at a time.
I really like that. And I also like that it's very doable for 15 minutes. If you said, get on the floor and play with them for an hour, I could see that being like, oh, it's a little much in the beginning. Even like, I remember my kids being little and hanging out in their room and playing with them. It could feel a little overwhelming at times. At 15 minutes that's why I ended up, what I actually realized is I was on my phone too much at one point. And so then I turned my phone off and I put music on, and then we were all kind of singing and dancing together, or put music on that I liked. And then I could sit there as they're doing whatever because I had music I liked. Like that was my key to staying present with them.
Yeah, I would tell expecting dads to get some dance moves ready too. I think that's a big part
we've
of
done
being
lots of dancing. We still do. My kids laugh at me because I'm still always dancing around the kitchen. They're like, "You're so embarrassing." Now they're at that age that I'm embarrassing, which is fine. I'm going to embrace that. So where can people find your work?
So fatherhoodready.com is our expecting dad hub. We also have fatherhoodunlocked.com, where we're sort of staging that for a larger community, and you can men can get on a wait list for the Fatherhood Unlocked community, which will come soon. And then we're on Instagram at Fatherhood Unlocked as well.
I will make sure that is all in the show notes. I've really enjoyed this. It was just a different kind of conversation that I've had and a wonderful perspective. And I appreciate that you're sharing your knowledge. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. This has been wonderful.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
You were probably expecting one, but got pregnant with two. We get it. Twin Talks encourages moms who are expecting twins as well as experienced moms of multiples. Together, we'll explore the unique challenges new parents face when raising two or more children of the same age. Join us as we embrace the joys of parenting when you've got double the duty. Subscribe through your favorite podcast app or say, "Hey Alexa, play the Twin Talks podcast." And be sure to visit newmommymedia.com to check out our other parenting shows, Preggy Pals, Newbies, Parent Savers, and the Boob Group. Twin Talks, parenting times 2.